Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on getting NERC compliance under control. My name is Leah Morse and I'm the marketing team lead here at Qualtrics. Your presenter today will be Terry Schroeder, control strategist at Qualtrics. Terry's been working with controls since the beginning of his career. He is an award-winning controls engineer, winner of the International George Westinghouse Signature of Excellence Award, and a prolific writer. He's authored and co-authored a number of published business books, and most relevant to today's conversation, the two NERC compliance books that you see in the presentation, Protecting Critical Infrastructure and the SIP-Low Compliance Program Guide. I like to say that he literally wrote the book on NERC. So I'll be handing things over to Terry shortly, but first let me tell you a little bit about Qualtrics. Now, we are a compliance management software company, and we take a technology team approach. We offer an electronic quality management system to our customers, but we also pair it with our team commitment to those customers and their industries to ensure that we're really helping to simplify their technology burdens. We were founded in 1993, and we are ISO 9001 registered and have been that way since 1996. We're proud Qualtrics users ourselves, and we actually use it in-house for our own compliance initiatives. Our office is located in downtown Blacksburg, Virginia, home of Virginia Tech, and in fact, many of our team members are Virginia Tech graduates. The majority of our team is located in the Blacksburg office, including our top-notch services and support team, but Terry and I are actually coming to you today from the great state of Texas. Finally, I want to thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put them in the GoToWebinar questions area, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. And with that, I think we are ready to get started, so I'll hand things over to Terry.
Thank you, Leah. Again, my name is Terry Schroeder, and today's webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about how to get NERC compliance under control, really kind of recapping the conversations that we had recently at the WEC conference. So some of the things that we really talked about with folks at WEC were how we could actually leverage a controls approach to really make a big difference in helping us get our hands around NERC compliance. So some of the things that we really found to be essential to that controls approach include evidence simplification. So I'm going to go over that today. The out-of-the-box workflows. So I have a solution that's actually ready to go, and a common workflow approach. So let's drill a little bit deeper into that and kind of get an understanding of what a controls framework really has to do to help us out with NERC compliance. And so if we really kind of think about it, when we break it down, there's a number of things we have to do, but we obviously have to collect, interact, and manage evidence. That's obviously something we must do. We're going to collect hundreds, if not thousands, of documents for our NERC compliance. We also need to have a structure to how we're actually doing work. So we're going to need some ability to actually know what tasks people need to perform and actually to assign those to the proper people. We also are going to need to orchestrate our compliance processes. So one of the things that we often end up with is we often end up with a lot of our processes and procedures as manual documents, which we need to follow, but we need to have some additional technology around that to basically turn those into highly consistent and reliable technology-based processes. We certainly have to enforce compliance checklists. That's another big thing we want to do in all of our controls, is make sure as we're going through collecting, interacting, managing, and so forth, that we're actually taking the time to positively identify that we're actually checking off each of the compliance requirements we need to make sure that we have. We also need to have a certain amount of scheduling activity that's going on. A lot of the activities we're going to do need to be performed on a recurring basis, so we're going to need some of that as well. And then at the end of the day, we've got to intelligently organize all of our evidence. So when I talk about a controls framework, this is what I'm talking about. This is what we've got to include in that controls framework to really be effective. So let's go ahead and jump into the solution and actually look at some of these concepts. These are the key things that we presented at WEC, and had a lot of people really interested in the benefits that some of these things actually provide to us. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. We'll go ahead and we'll get into the software here. I'm already logged in. And so now I'm in the Qualtrics software. I'm at my home page, and we can see there's a number of different items that are going on. We will look at some of those in just a little bit. But the first thing I kind of want to talk about is evidence simplification. I mean, when we really kind of think about it, from an auditing perspective, it's our evidence that's going to demonstrate whether or not we are in a state of compliance. So let's go look at some of the ways that we typically would deal with organizing and managing our evidence. So the most common approach is what I call the standards-based folders approach. And even when these are not physical folders on a hard drive, so that I can have a document that actually would show up in more than one of these different folders, there's still a big problem with this. And what I'm going to hope that you see here very, very soon is, what the heck does all of that stuff mean? And the fact of the matter is, we don't always know. We're not, in fact, most of us are not going to remember all of the details about the specific requirements, sub-requirements, and sub-requirements that are actually part of NERC compliance. So when I start collecting evidence at this level, it becomes very, very difficult for me to know for certain what evidence is actually needed here. There's another big problem too. What happens when a new version of the standard comes out? So what happens when this goes from SIP 002-5.1a to SIP 002-6? What do we do with that? Now suddenly we've got multiple hierarchies of all of this stuff that nobody's going to remember, and it starts to become very, very, very complicated. So there's a completely different approach that we can take to actually address that. And let's go ahead and look at the approach that we're taking here at Qualtrics. So we have defined an evidence hierarchy that's based on the physical outputs, the documents that we know we're going to collect. And we're using human readable terms so that it's very, very easy as a human being to actually know what's expected of me. So for example, if I was looking at my BES cyber system categorization control, I could drill down into that and I say, oh, I need my impact ratings evidence assessment. Well, that makes really good sense. If I had SIP 002-5.1a-R1.1, that wouldn't tell me anything. This tells me exactly what it's looking for. And of course, I've now got a nice document that obviously fits into there. It's very easy for a human being to understand. And one of the things that I talk a lot about when I talk about NERC compliance, probably one of the most essential characteristics of NERC compliance that's often overlooked, the majority of the people who are going to be involved in collecting this evidence for us, the people we're going to assign the work to, NERC compliance is not their job. It is a burden they have to deal with simply as a necessity while they're doing everything else they're responsible for. So if I'm a service technician, if I'm a cybersecurity specialist, if I'm a change management IT person, I have all kinds of responsibilities, but I've also got this NERC stuff, and I'm not doing it all day long. I'm doing it in and out. In fact, some people may only get involved in NERC activities very periodically. So as an individual, I might not even have a NERC responsibility more than once a year. So if that's the case, if everybody that we're expecting to do this work for us isn't focused on being NERC compliance gurus, they're really doing other things that we have to have done, then we've got to make the user experience for them as simple as humanly possible. And this is one of the most important big steps that we do. One of the other things you probably noticed when I went through the standards-based hierarchy is that there are many levels within a given folder. So you go down 3, 4, 5 levels deep, but you won't see that here because we don't need that. We're going down simply one level inside of each master control folder, and that's going to be exactly what we need to do to be able to collect our evidence. Now, there's another really, really important benefit that we get from going at this approach, because one of the problems I brought up at the very beginning was that we do have to map things over to those standards, and those standard folders aren't a good place to store evidence. So where do they actually fit into the world? Well, they fit in at the folder level. So if we look at folder properties, the way Qualtrics is designed is it's set up to basically add any of the standards that we want to apply to the documents that are going to be in this folder. In this case, it's my BES Impact Ratings Evidence folder. Don't have any standards loaded into this system right now, but if I did, I would have 2 or 3 standards already selected here. And one of the great benefits of this approach is, let's say I have a new version of this standard come out. And in a lot of cases, a new version doesn't change a lot of things. It can sometimes, but a lot of times, a lot of things stay the same. It may even be just a simple wording change in the documents. They are legal compliance documents. They often get changed just because of verbiage requirements. So how do I handle saying the evidence I have here, excuse me, is part of this new standard? I would simply add the standards into Qualtrics, add them on to the folder, and I'm done. So all I'm really doing is I'm updating a standard model with the metadata as the standards change. Of course, if a standard changes, requires some new evidence be collected, then we would actually come back, add in a new evidence folder, and build in the workflow to make sure we collect that. So this gives you a pretty good understanding of how we're approaching the whole idea of evidence simplification. You could also think about it from another perspective, and I want to make sure I point this out as well. So if I come back to documents and I say, hey, you want to know what's going on in your world. You're the manager now. You really want to see what's happening. Well, what you can do in this kind of a hierarchy is you can very, very easily understand exactly what's going on. I can tell I've had one BES cyber system categorization run. You can drop down and literally see anything you want to just by saying, I want to check whatever, let's say I want to check my personnel risk assessment control. You can pop right to it. It's really easy. You don't have to remember anything about the standards. You can go right to the content you want to review and see what's happening in the world. So it's a very powerful way to both collect evidence and a very powerful way to make evidence far more transparent than it used to be. So that's great. We've got that evidence. That's a fantastic thing. But how the heck are we going to get all the evidence where we want it to be? And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use workflows in our controls. So we've got a whole list of workflows. Qualtrics is developing an entire SIP and 693 model out of the box, so you'll be able to literally deploy this and use it right out of the box. And each of these workflows are going to, where required, are going to prompt us to collect the appropriate evidence that we need to collect. So let's go look at one that I've got running. I already got set up for us to take a look at, and let's take a look at what's going on here. So in this case, I have a control. It's a piece of workflow, and this is the first step in the process. So this got assigned to me. It's actually all set up to be assigned to me all the way through, but it would be assigned to whoever needed it. And what I've done is we've got a number of links that say click to upload evidence. So the first step is let's get the evidence, collect it, review it, manage it. And every single collection of evidence works exactly the same way. It's a link. It opens up a window. You simply browse to the computer, your computer for the file you want, click upload and create, and you're done. It automatically goes into the correct folder for you. So as a user, if you think about it, here's someone who, they don't know anything about the compliance management solution. They don't know anything about how really using the tool, but they get assigned this task. They can still do the work. Oh, they need the assessment evidence. Great, I got that. Here it is. Boom, upload. So we're simplifying the entire user experience for every customer. Now, when we're done with doing that, we'll end up with a list of the evidence that we've actually collected as part of this activity. And now we need to identify if there were any documents that were changed. So perhaps maybe the cyber assets got changed. And then we could even say, So at this point, we've completed the first step in the process, and we're going to go ahead and submit it. This would normally go to another person who's been assigned the work. It's going to come to me because I've set it up just to follow through. But before I click that button, I also want to note this compliance information already collected, including for rework loops. The point of this is that as we go through a workflow, we're going to collect information that the next person may need. We also may, at some point, collect information further downstream that someone back upstream needs because, hey, it got rejected, it got sent back to me, somebody said, no, I don't think that's right, you need to give me more information. So we need to make sure that we have that information available to people. So we go ahead and display it, even if it's not already populated at this point, so that people can easily see that's where I'm going to get the information if it comes back to me. Again, trying to make it very, very clear how the workflow is actually going to behave for the user. We don't want them thinking about it. So let's go ahead and submit this. And at this point, you'll see now that all the evidence that started in this review is already here. I can look at every single piece of it. I'm now the reviewer. And my responsibility would be to actually open up each of these documents, look at them, make certain that I agree that everything's right, and then I'm going to have my compliance checklist. So what do I need to have? Are all my lists updated and accurate? Yes, they are. Are the BES impact ratings correct? That's a big one. So if I want to verify those, they are. Is the BES impacts evidence complete? Do I have enough evidence to prove that my impact ratings are correct? Yes, I do. And when was this actually done, completed on? So now we've got a milestone, a stake in the ground to be able to say that. So let's just go ahead and assume that it was gone ahead and okay. And then we actually end up with, in this particular case, a one additional task because some of the requirements in NERC CIP require a specific sign-off by the CIP senior manager. That's an individual that's been authorized and documented by each entity that is registered under NERC. And the CIP senior manager has about a half a dozen responsibilities that they have to have their own signature on and approval for. So in this case, we're going to have to collect that CIP senior manager review as well. So we'll go ahead and say yes. We'll give a date here. And we'll go ahead and say it's good. So we didn't reject it. We're not going to loop back. Everything was fine. We just went through a control. And even if that wasn't a process that you were personally experienced with, you should have been able to pick up just exactly how intuitive, simple, and easy that entire process was. And I point that out very specifically because we're using a common controls approach for all of these workflows. So if I go and look at any of the other workflows in this system, they're all going to behave the same way. They're all going to be looking to collect evidence. They're all going to have review loops. They're all going to have compliance checklists. It's all going to look very similar, very consistent. So as what we want to do is we want to make it so easy for the people that we expect to do this work that they can't make mistakes. We want to make it as mistake-proof as possible. Now, I've talked a lot about these things being controls rather than just saying they're workflows. And there's a very specific reason for me doing that. If you think about it, a workflow is just a workflow. It's a way of saying I'm going to do certain things in certain orders. So we've already built into our workflows the specific steps to both collect evidence and to perform compliance checks and to get reviews. So that starts to move it into a form that actually says it's an internal control. The fact that we're linking it automatically to all of the documents in the right place is another layer of the control. So we're already connecting all these dots together by the design of the workflow. The last piece are reports, because we need to be able to report on a lot of things. So we've also included a workflow for every, a report for every workflow as well. So you've also got all of the information that shows you how many times did each of my controls run, what were the results of them, Let's go ahead and just run one and see what it looks like. And we can see all of the information that we want to see about who did what, when was the work done. We have links to the different IDs so we can go and look at it in more detail if we wanted to. So we've really got all the information that we were expecting to get, that we were collecting as we went through each of those processes. So there's several controls in the solution that also are a little more advanced. So we do have the ability to do some fairly advanced scenarios as well. I wanted to make sure today that I showed you the real basic common workflow structure, but we do have some other capabilities that I'll go into in another webinar where we start to break into the ability to do things like create mitigation plans with individual tasks completely ad hoc so that we can start to deal with some of those unique nuances that some of the different elements of NERC compliance really require us to address. So hopefully this has given you a really good idea about what's going on at Qualtrics, why we think that our approach is going to radically simplify what people have to do in the utility market in order to be compliant. There is no silver bullet. There's no magic one answer that's going to do everything. But what we can do is we can make things as simple as possible so that people can actually do their work with a high degree of assurance, along with a lot of oversight on our part, with a systems that's designed to help us be certain we understand where we're at as we go through our compliance activities. So just kind of wrapping up, and then I'll open it up for questions. You know, come visit us at Qualtrics. You can contact me personally if you have any questions that you'd like to ask me about. I highly recommend that you visit our website. We're always very excited to give individual demos for folks who want to dig in a little bit deeper. We have a lot of information on our website that's very, very useful, very valuable. So I encourage you to continue to reach out to us and learn more about what we're doing. At this point, I would like to open up the webinar to any questions. Okay, looks like we may have a question. No questions. Sounds like we're great. Thank you very much for attending. And I hope to hear from you soon and talk to you more about how we can make a big difference in your overall compliance objectives. Thank you again.